We are live.
Okay, let's call tonight's BPAC meeting to order. Lucretia, can we get a roll call, please?
Yes, you can, Chair. Eric Bowe. He's online.
Eric, are you with us? Circle back and then go back to him.
Judith Gabriel.
Here.
Member Tony Gerlix. Member Steve Pilcher.
Here.
Member Gary Schiffmiller.
Here.
Chair Michael Garcia.
Present.
Eric, are you back online?
Yes, I'm now a presenter. Thanks.
Chair, you have a quorum.
Okay, thank you so much. Sorry, I'm pulling up the agenda. Next up is the approval of tonight's agenda. Is there any changes from staff?
There is not, Chair.
Any changes from members? If not, what is
Just a minor point, I think
Sure.
4A, we're supposed to be approving the minutes of November 14th meeting. That was last month's meeting.
our last month's meeting minutes ready yet? That might have been the delay.
They're in the packet.
Oh, they are in the
I
packet.
think it's just a type.
I think, Chair, it's a typo.
Okay, so it's modifying 4A to request approval of October. You change it to November's meeting minutes. Okay, any other changes from members? If not, what's the will of the committee?
Move to approve the agenda modified.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, Lucretia, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Yes, you may, Chair. Member Eric Bowe.
Yes,
Member Judith Gabriel. Member Tony Gerlix. Member Steve Pilcher.
Yes.
Member Gary Schiffmiller. Chair Michael Garcia.
Yes.
You have an approval of the agenda.
Okay. Next up is approval of the meeting minutes. Let's go in order. First up is we modified it, so it's request approval of the November monthly meeting minutes. Any changes from staff?
There is not, Chair.
Any changes from members? And if not, what's the will of the committee? Sure.
It's from like,
Which, Gary, speaking to your mic that way.
sorry.
Lucretia can hear.
5, communications from the public under Irina Osela's statement. The last sentence says, standing here today saying there needs to be an increase of penalties and increase the safety of pediatricians and bicyclists. I'm all for pediatrician safety, but I think it's beyond the scope of this committee. I think the word is supposed to be pedestrian.
Okay, so there's a change from pediatrician to pedestrian. Any other changes? Can we get a motion to approve the meeting minutes for November?
I move to approve.
I'll second.
Yeah, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Or none? Lucretia, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Member Eric Bowe.
Yes,
Member Judith Gabriel.
Yes.
Member Tony Gerlix. Member Steve Pilcher. Member Gary Schiffmiller.
Yes.
Chair Michael Garcia.
Yes.
Your approval of the minutes for November.
Great. Next up is request approval of the July 11th, 2024 meeting minutes. Any changes from staff?
No, no, Chair.
Okay. Any changes from members? If not, what's the will of the committee?
Move to approve.
Motion by member Pilcher to approve,
Second.
second by member Gabriel. Any discussion? Or none? Lucretia, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Yes, you may, Chair. Member Eric Bowe.
yes,
Member Judith Gabriel.
Yes.
Member Tony Gerlix. Member Steve Pilcher,
Yes.
Member Gary Schiff Miller,
Abstain, I was not yet a member of the committee at that time.
Chair Michael Garcia.
Yes.
Minutes, approval of July minutes.
Okay.
Excuse,
Um,
excuse me, Chair.
yes.
Tony, would you please turn your mic on? I'm not able to hear you. Thank you.
Sorry, Eric, thank you.
Not a problem.
Hey, next up is item 5, communications from the public. Do we have any members of the public that would like to address the committee tonight?
I believe we had somebody online, Chair.
Okay, sure. I'm sorry, I can't see that far. My old age is getting to me. So just please identify yourself and go ahead and give you 2 minutes to address the committee.
Hi, yeah, my name is Meredith Ziegler. I am presenting, or I'd like to talk to you tonight about something that I perceive as a safety issue for pedestrians and cyclists in Santa Fe. This is something that I actually have discussed with Gary before. There is a section of the Acequia Trail that runs between Harrison Road and La Cieneguita. It's a short section of trail. And recently the Acequia Trail actually has been expanded beyond through Tamayes. But this specific section of trail is people habitually drive their vehicles through this section of trail. I'm not really sure why this specific section is so prone to vehicular usage, but it is. And this is something that I've kind of been trying to get the city to put a bollard up for, I guess, gosh, going on 5 years now. And I've kind of I've put in requests through constituent services, and they've come out and look at it. And I've been told that it would pose a safety issue to cyclists. But personally, I think being hit by a car while you're cycling down a trail is more of a safety issue than a cyclist inadvertently running into a bollard. So this is something I'd like to see on the section of the trail. And I would like to share a short video of a car driving down the section of trail that was recorded at my house, if that's okay. It's a 8-second video just for impact. And let's see if this is gonna work. You can see the vehicle come down the trail and speed off.
You said you had put in some work orders that were denied by city staff?
Yes, that is correct. And I can provide those work order numbers. I will be honest with you, the last one was in February of 2020, and I sort of gave up after that. And understandably, not a lot was happening in 2020. So yeah, this is something that I recently talked to Gary about again, because there was a car that the vehicle in that video that I just showed you, the police were pursuing that vehicle. And he evaded police by using the trail to cut through the neighborhood using the bike trail. So this is, by the way, something that the city of Santa Fe police are aware of. I let them know. But yeah, it's even worse if people using the trail to flee from the police. So I think it's a really good place to put a bollard.
Well, if you wouldn't mind, please send me the work order number. Just that way I
Yes.
can reference it when we begin
I
to
will.
reopen this case with staff.
Okay, great. I will do that.
Thank you
Okay,
for
thank you.
bringing
Thank
this
you.
to our attention.
Yes, thank you for listening. All right, I appreciate it. Okay,
Yes, absolutely. Have a
Bye-bye.
good evening.
thanks. You too. Bye.
Any other members of the public that would like to address the committee? If not, we will then go ahead and close that portion of the agenda and move on to communications from other agencies. First up is Safe Routes to School, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Ryan Harris, Safe Routes to School, Santa Fe Public Schools. Just wanted to give you a an update on what we've been up to in the last couple of months. I haven't been able to make it over to one of these meetings. 2 months. Our walk and roll to school programs are still going. About 50% of them have shut down for the winter, but the other ones are still continuing through despite the cold weather. This is the program where teachers meet students once or more a week at a location within walking distance from their school and walk or ride bikes with them to school. Parents are encouraged but not required to participate. The end of the semester numbers are almost in. We're currently sitting at 1,208 participants, which I think is great. In my mind, that's 1,208 cars that didn't join a long drop-off line in the morning, didn't join morning traffic. And we don't have accurate data about the average length of a trip to school in Santa Fe specifically, but national average is 2 miles. So that's over 2,400 miles saved, vehicular miles. The week of November 14th, we held a series of story walk events for Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day, which is a national movement to celebrate the anniversary of Ruby Bridges' first day as the first Black student to attend a formerly segregated school in the South. In which we did a story walk of I Am Ruby Bridges, which is her children's book, which consisted of 20 panels featuring the pages of her book and discussion questions around the subject of recognizing inequality of your community, bullying, inclusion, and actions that youth can take to make effective changes in their world. It concluded in a collective art project where students were encouraged to think about how they can make change in their community or school. We had over 200 participants, and then the story walk was then put into Aspen Community School for a couple of weeks for the students there to enjoy it as well. And we got a little bit of press. We were featured in the Santa Fe Reporter, and we've been asked to be part of a toolkit to be distributed by the National Safe Routes Partnership and the Ruby Bridges Foundation for other organizations that want to host similar events next November. And then the other fun news is we've been working with Free Bikes for Kids, and we asked our walk and roll champions who lead our walk and roll programs to identify students who need bicycles, and we will be receiving 55 bikes to be distributed in January to students of, at this point, 6 different schools that they can use to walk and ride to school as well. And those bikes will be held at events with safety training and distributed help. So there's get a little bit of mechanical training and a little bit of operational training how to operate the bikes properly. Where we're at right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from members? Well, thank you. I appreciate the update. Next up is Bike Santa Fe. Aria, is Aria with us? Okay.
No. So just a few updates from us. Our main action we've been doing is the audit, which Jen will be presenting on. We are continuing our collaboration with Bike Albuquerque, ABQ, and Velo Cruces, and we'll be attending a statewide bike advocacy coalition meeting next week with them, and we're planning to join them for the upcoming legislative session. So far, we plan to support legislation for the Idaho stop. We're also working on getting people trained as LCIs to expand our education outreach, which I believe we're hearing much more of that from Tony Gerlitz this evening. But there is a possibility of joining an LCI seminar in February or March with Vela Cruces in Las Cruces. We've been encouraging cyclists through our email newsletter to make sure to report path, street, and sidewalk maintenance issues on the city website. So we hope people continue to do that to show all of the issues we have with maintenance. And the last thing is just that we are planning to have a winter social at the end of January, and just stay tuned for details on that.
Okay. Thank you for the update. Any questions, comments from members? Member Gerlitz.
Thank you, Aria. No questions. There were two things I wanted to bring back to attention. One is what Aria articulated, that Bike Santa Fe is actually members of the public. Gary is one. Brian is well and extremely helpful with us. I wanted to present to BPAC, if any members of BPAC wanted to be LCIs. That's a multi-stage process. course initially. When that, or an in-person course. And when that is done, then much more rigorous process, taking into account a 2-day seminar and with somebody from the League of American High Schools. That particular portion of it costs $500. City else for avenues of funding. That as many people in Santa Fe be, which would allow us to go into school. Those are my two requests. If anybody on BPAC like BCI, that would increase our numbers, we need a minimum of 8. And then sources of funding, $500 per person.
Thank you, Gary. Tony, sorry. What we can do is look at, I know that there might be some resources available coming up in the beginning of next year, so can look at opportunities. I know BPAC has a little bit of funding as well. But I think a formal request would definitely need to come from BPAC. So we can look at how that formal request is presented, whether it's through a motion or whatnot. Definitely open to that.
Great. So shall I put that in a formal proposal on paper and send it to you, Counselor?
Yes, that would be best. Yeah. So I think that's something I definitely would work to stand behind.
Great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes, Member Pilcher.
You mentioned pursuing the Idaho stop law change with the legislature. Do you think that has a good chance or?
We're really kind of just hearing about this as we've just started continuing communication with Vela Crucis and Bike ABQ. So they kind of brought that up as a likely bill for us to support. So we don't know a whole lot about, who's sponsoring the bill or what what that will look like. But it's one piece of legislation that we've heard is likely to be brought up.
Washington State adopted that during the pandemic, so no one really knew much about it. But that'd be an example of someplace it's been done.
Mhm.
Any other comments? Member Schiff Miller.
I'm wondering if there's been any talk about trying to pass a 5-foot to pass law statewide.
Right. I think there was some in our email communication with the other bike organizations about that. So maybe we'll discuss that in our meeting next week as a possibility. Yeah.
Any other comments or questions from members? If not, thank you, Aria. Appreciate the update. Next is Public Safety Committee, Member Pilcher.
Thank you, Chair. We did meet last month. We won't meet this month. Apparently the meeting's been canceled. And last month we took an action to approve a budget adjustment resolution, about $187,000 to fund help fund some police salaries. That was kind of a no-brainer. It's basically agreeing that the city ought to accept this money and pay for it. Otherwise, that was about all that happened at the meeting, other than the typical reports back from fire chief and the police chief.
The question was that for the $1,000 incentives that the governing body approved last night?
No, I don't believe so. I think this is to help supplement some non-commissioned officers and their salaries, and gradually over time, the hope is that the city will be able to fund those positions without assistance from the state.
Any other questions for Member Pilcher?
Still trying to figure out exactly what that committee does. I'm surprised to read this morning's paper, the restructuring concept of putting police and fire directly under city manager. That thought that'd be something might be appropriate to bounce off that committee, but maybe not.
If it was assigned to that committee, to be honest.
I don't think so. Given the timeline, I don't think so.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, and Eric, I did not see MPO on the agenda. Was that an omission on was that? Gotcha. Okay. I just wanted to make sure. So I was like, wait. Okay. So thank you for confirming that for me, Eric. Okay, next up, let's go ahead and move forward. Uh, Moving into discussion and possible action items. First up is downtown multimodal analysis of 5 signalized intersection. And that is Mr. Ani. The floor is yours, Eric.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, always a pleasure to be here. I have a few short announcements before I go into that. Number one, in August of this year, the city of Santa Fe transitioned to a new set of transportation impact analysis guidelines. Guidelines that this organization, this committee helped support. In short order, we saw what I would submit to you is really dramatic results of moving away from what was, as I had articulated in previous discussions, a reliance on the state act, which was steeped in highway standards, and so forth. The dramatic results was, I can say this is a huge win, and I'm so happy to tell you about this story, is that this was a result of myself and Leah being part of the city's design development. When we look at proposals, when we looked at traffic impact analysis, we were recognizing that several projects were leading to very long, ended, very wide decel lanes and turn lanes. And then we began to ask questions. Are these necessary? What is the derivative? What are the criteria? What we learned was, as a result of using the SAM, you're seeing in the road, and you can see on many instances, are just really decel lanes that serve a really good purpose, understandably so, the speed differential is you don't want hitting you. But inside a city, an urban context, really doesn't make sense. Bottom line is that the proposal that started this on South Meadows, really, in our opinion, South Meadows Road, dramatic impact, tremendous. Taking a really cool road with tree-lined street, and then just basically wide. So with the help of traffic engineer Gene Wolfenberger and many meetings of negotiations with the developers, using the new, just 2 or 3 weeks ago, they said, hey, we will, I don't know exactly the language, but there will be no decel lanes. Well, that's how impact. Secondly, consultant team that the city has hired to help redesign one of the roads are using the criteria as similar results of not having these decel lanes. This is an impact that will last for years, that will just start to begin to dial back the way we have overbuilt our roads. Great news there. There's a kickoff meeting next week for what has been delayed for over a year because of certain procurement, which is the street design guide. Something that we've been working closely with our friends with Public Works and Land Use, try to get in place. We lost the money tragically. It's an economic finance. Money has been reinstated thanks to councilors like myself who allowed that. And we have a kickoff meeting. I anticipate that our work with Gene Wolfenberger and others with the city will be in about a year. We will be presenting street design guidance to this group. We hope that you will be involved. The MTO is updating our MTP. We have 2 consultant teams for 2 sort of pronged approach. One is, let's talk about Cerritos. You can look forward to survey and stakeholder engagement starting in January, really diving deep into what is the Cerritos. And then on the other side of the consultants are working on the technical issues and all of the good things for their MTP. We will keep you up informed. Good news on terms from the city and I'm sorry, Ramella's not here. Kudos to Ramella. Much delayed Acequia Trail from Rafina to and Fleet on the south side, been delayed for years. Kickoff meeting happened last week. Looking forward to getting design in hand. That major trail. And so I will just jump right in. Great. So here is the traffic signal that is used for dramatic effect for my presentation. A little background. First of all, thanks to the city of Santa Fe who allowed the MPO working with the city to conduct this. It's a big deal. Number two, I'm thankful to the NMDOT who helped fund it through federal grant in the tune of about $40,000. So who believed in us that this was an important component. So going back even a little further for me and the MPO was, this is something that out of curiosity, when I used to work downtown county, often just walking around. Let's go, where did these come from? What are the purposes? Do they still have relevance today? And that was sort of the impetus behind the curiosity of the study. Understanding that they were put in place at a time, and I want to give some reference and context of time of when the first stoplight was placed. First stoplight, which I endearingly named Roxanne, is located right there, LaFont, San Francisco Street. Approximately late 40s, that was put in place, embarking on what I submit to you all, the renaissance of. If you look at the context of downtown right here at the plaza, in 1950 and prior night, pretty much most of the traffic was coming through and sort of deadheading as a destination in town. You think about that as sort of the genesis, right? Origins of traffic engineering and traffic control devices and such. The downtown core really then expanded into what look at St. Michael's, St. Francis, Cerritos Road, all of the streets today that have become more really were concentrated. So I want to read from the comprehensive plan for a little bit more context. The Central Business District is the destination for the great majority of both local and highway traffic. It is the major objective of both citizens and visitors. Approximately 40% of all traffic of state highways in the vicinity of Santa Fe is destined for the business street. So that context helps us shortly after this or during this process, traffic signalization to maximize flow and the problem here is twofold. Not only must there be streets permitting automobile traffic to reach the business district, but there must be facilities for parking of cars in the downtown area. That's another point. So that context at least helps understand what was going on in now. Fast forward about 20 years, and as a result of this comprehensive plan asking for a new highway to go through downtown, we then had St. Francis. So St. Francis, 63. I would argue at that point, St. Francis did its job and continues to do by deflecting traffic away from town, then sort of relieving that intensity of what was. So the study, which I found to be fun and fascinating, really looked at the data in terms of what's the volume and using the uniform traffic control as the key indicator of sort of warranting signalization. What is the volumes? What is the turning volume? And then what are the, and that we're using cameras, bicycle and pedestrian as well. And what we discovered, the study is pretty clear. The actual traffic volume is really, really low. Outside of, 5 o'clock, short period. The warrants in the study basically said that, and what was really fun about this project is the traffic engineer that his name's really a nice gentleman, was really challenged by this project. It's typically he had been used to in his education experience was using the MUTCD to put traffic signals in, not take them away. what the study essentially did was sort of reverse engineer that logic. And he had some challenges with that that he overcame with us working together, which was a commitment for pedestrian safety. So combination of factors went into the study, which was pedestrian level of service and bus service. Bottom line, it was basically that signals aren't warranted and won't be warranted on any year by any of the 9 measures. The study, there are certain recommendations. I want to give some credit. I'm going to go get some water. So at the end of the study, there are certain recommendations that look at removing the traffic signals or perhaps keeping them some slight modifications. The study from the MPO's perspective is not to say the city ought to do one thing, just lay it out plainly that there are options. And that we're hope that down the road here, city may or may not choose to do some things. Going back to Mike Dalmelin, he was part of the study from the beginning. Provided a lot of data and immediately looked at these signals. I have a lot of respect. Very made some changes immediately. What if unless we hadn't looked and implemented? So, right? Oh, I decided embarrassing. At the end of the day, I'm not asking this board to adopt this or anything. Other than just be aware of it. We recognize that end of it, it's really what the context of using history. Maybe some things that are not just down elsewhere can also be looked at with curiosity and critically say maybe we can do things different. That's the big takeaway. I know I know we will. Especially we have the leadership in place today. Just that. I'm extremely pleased to be part of this. We have, and that this is not the end. We're looking through the lens of history for empathy, why this is in place, what happened, and then using the values the city is today through surveys and so forth. Encourage our traffic, support them. I will stand for questions.
Thank you, Eric, for the thoughtful presentation. Any Member Pilcher?
One question, as part of the final decision-making process, is traffic engineering able to provide a cost savings of like, well, we won't have to maintain these signal lights, therefore we save number of dollars per year?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, there were 2 parts of that question. First of all, was a recognition that there would be a cost. What we didn't get is any specific data about that cost. Also, there's a cost moving that ought to be. And there's 2 parts of that cost. One of them is just the financial. And the second one is there may be some political public pushback. If you think about 75 years of these, people get used to them. So Mike Damlin's experience had been moving traffic challenging for the public. Is their use? So those are the things we talked about and that ought to be considered going forward. So part of the study is just recommending that it's okay to remove them. Let's do so thoughtfully so that there is a record. We do not specifically have those numbers. That was part of the initial discussion. Is to look, remove 5. There's a lot of.
Thank you, Member Pilcher. Any questions or comments for work on this side? Well, thank you for the update on this important topic, and surprising to know that streetlights weren't implemented until 1940. Quite surprising, but
Well, so the first traffic signal in New Mexico was 1922 in downtown Albuquerque, Central and Florida, for useless information that's nerds like me. And Cleveland had the first traffic signal in 1914 in the country. So circa 1940s, Santa Fe was. It's pretty intriguing. And the Genesis story isn't why I call it 10, it's 78. We dropped the first album. And Roxanne, do not have to turn on the rest.
thank you for that little anecdote, Eric. I appreciate it. And also, okay, well, thank you for that presentation. Let's go to move on to the next agenda item, which is discussion of potential use of speed limits, striping, and signage. Thank you, both members Miller and Pilcher. I believe this was Chip Miller and Pilcher's items, right? Just Pilcher's?
That's mine.
Okay.
So I did some research and included this in the packet. As you may recall, a few months ago, we were contacted by a citizen who noted she'd been involved in a collision with a bicyclist, I think on the river trails, my memory's correct. I think her report was that bicyclist was going at a high rate of speed. And of course, for a pedestrian, everything's going to seem pretty high rate. So I don't know what, but if you're heading west on the river trail, it means you're going downhill. It's pretty easy to get up to a decent level of speed. And there are portions of the trail that are narrow. So one of the things I wanted to look at was, well, what do other communities do in terms of speed limits? And I don't know if there doesn't appear to be any standard that, and if there's any standard, it's that if people or if communities are adopting speed limits on multi-use trails, they tend to be 15-mile-an-hour speed limits. But many communities don't, and you'll see there's a citation here of Portland, Oregon, which is a pretty bicycle-friendly community. They just basically encourage good behavior. And that could be done through signage or just general education of the public of how to peacefully coexist on a multi-use trail. Also notice that the AASHTO standards call for designing trails such for higher speeds, which probably doesn't help matters out. But that seems to also be a standard methodology that AASHTO uses. So I list a lot of communities that do have the 50-mile-an-hour speed limits, and you see it. Some of these are mostly out west, so there's somewhere back east. But this is just a random search on the internet to see who's doing anything. The other options are a lot of communities put up additional signage, bicyclists yield to pedestrians or share the trail type signs. Usually my experience has been usually if you see a stripe to try to, divide it between the two different ways of traffic, probably need a little bit more width than we have in some sections. And again, that's no guarantee that the speed will be slower. So I don't know if we just need to do more in terms of educating the public about, the bicycling public, about maintaining a more reasonable speed on multi-use trails. Or perhaps look at putting up additional signage to remind people to peacefully coexist. Obviously, I think we put up both the speed limit, that there's some anticipation, I'm sure, from some members, well, how would that be enforced? And I'm assuming at this point in time that the city doesn't have the staff to have a enforcer out on the bike trails to keep people from speeding. So, on the other hand, maybe some people, if you put up a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit sign, that would at least be an indication of, oh, I shouldn't go any faster than this, and I'm a good citizen, so I won't go any faster than this. Well, that's the result of my studies. I don't really have a conclusive answer of how we should best approach this. It probably would be good for us to get back to the individual who submitted the concern, at least let her know we discussed it and whatever actions this committee may wish to take. So that's my thoughts.
Well, thank you, Member Pilcher, for that review and research that you conducted on the matter. Any questions or comments? I'm just going to go down the line. Gabriel, Member Gerlitz, and Schiffmiller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is in line with previous discussions I think that we've had around trail etiquette and informing people how to act on a trail. And I think on a multi-use trail, it's really important. And I have brought up the idea of putting some stencil signs on some of the paths, which I still think could be a low-cost, effective way to educate people. I know in Boulder, they have the multi-use trails painted a certain color for the pedestrians who are on the right, and markings to indicate where the bikes should ride on those trails. So I would be all for the city doing something like this, because I really do feel like there's a lot of people who speed on the trails. As a biker, walker, and runner on the trails, quite often the bikes just come by without any indication that they're coming. So I think it's well needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Steve. My question is, as we just heard what Boulder did, do you have any information as to if Portland put in additional signage? Anything?
No, I'd have to try to do some contact, find the appropriate staff person up there and contact and see what they might have done. Portland if you've been there, it's a very busy bicycle town. So I mean, when I drive through Portland, I'm usually looking for where are the bicyclists, because there's so many of them out there. So I'm kind of on more of a high alert. And I don't know how many actual separate, they got some bike paths I know that go down along some of the highway system that passes through the city. I don't know what else they have elsewhere.
Yeah, no, I think that would be good. I do think that some sort of differentiation, whether it's signage or striping or painting, be appropriate.
Thank you, Member Gerlitz. Member Schiffmiller.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to say I'm in favor of putting up 15-mile-an-hour speed limit signs. And even though I know it wouldn't be enforced, I think you're right. I think a lot of people would see it and abide by it. And if we had a city ordinance, then someone who got hit by a bicyclist who was speeding would have legal grounds to sue. Another sign that I think we need is at every access to every trail, we should have a sign that says no motor vehicles. I have seen motorcycles on the river trail, on the Asakia Trail, and on the Arroyo Chamiso Trail. And maybe the motorcycles would or wouldn't abide by it, but I think we need those signs to make it clear that they are not allowed. And I think a 15-mile-an-hour sign might also be combined with, no motor vehicles, e-bikes okay, or something to that effect, to make it clear that e-bikes are not considered motor vehicle. They are allowed on the trails.
Thank you, Member Schiffmiller. Yeah,
I think the last time I was on, I think it was the Arroyo Chamiso Trail, that I saw no ATV signs put up, which was a new approach. I had not seen that before. I haven't run across any ATVs going through there, but apparently that must be enough to put up the signs. I assume it's the Parks Department that's putting up the signs. They're the ones that manage the trail system. Once they're built, it Public Works builds them and they get turned over to Parks. I think. But, I just wanted to bring this back and see if there's anything that we want to formally recommend. It'd probably be to the Parks Department to look at. And obviously this all involves costs, whether it's painting, putting up signage, whatever the case may be. I don't think any of it would be incredibly costly.
Any other comments? What's the will of the committee? Yes, Member Gibber.
Steve, are you on the policy? Okay. All right, is this something your subcommittee is interested in taking up? I do feel like there's a role for motion education and communication as well. But I don't know if an ordinance is appropriate or you guys want to explore it. Is that basically what you're suggesting, that
Well, I think
do a little more research? Or
I think it depends upon which course the BPAC would like us to take. If it's more into imposing a speed limit sign or something like that, that would obviously probably concur through an ordinance. That would be appropriate to be with the committee. If it's just going to be education, well, not to push off the work, but it probably more appropriately fit within your committee.
Yeah, I was thinking education around any policies we develop, but I think the other piece of this is we don't seem to have a budget dedicated to maintenance of the trails, or that this committee can draw from it. It's always I'll ask for it or I'll look for it. And I think this is a problem that we don't have dedicated funding to do things like this, because I think that's always going to get in the way, that we can't find the funding. So I do have a concern about the funding.
Understandable. I can speak to that, Member Gabriel. So today I got a request from our finance director there. The administration is now looking how to allocate the one-time funding that is from unanticipated GRT from fiscal year 24. I'm happy to move forward with this being one of the requests, given purchasing signs I would consider a one-time funding. It's not necessarily reoccurring expense. We can say we want to, this is where I would like to get the guidance of the committee, the subcommittee, and how much would be appropriate to request, because I can throw a number out there just to throw a number out there, but I don't want to have it too low, because I mean, I don't think it could ever be too high, so to speak. But I want to make sure that we get the money to begin to immediately implement, whether it's even for other issues outside of safety issues on trails, right? Any bicycle or pedestrian related signage that needs to be implemented. Those are how I see one-time funding allocations should be implemented. So that's just my 2 cents on it. Yeah. Member Gerlitz.
Thank you, Chair. It'd be difficult for me to sort of advocate one way or the other. I think we need something, but I wonder if BPAC could do a little research on our own, either in Boulder or Portland and other bicycle cities. League of American Bicyclists must have data on this. What works in trails? I could say, let's stripe the thing, but it may not work. I have any data to say that whether that works. Signage is better, other painting less, or whatever. I think that information backing any sort of proposal.
Member Gabriel.
I think it's a good idea for us to do research. One of the things that occurs to me also is Portland and Boulder have very different cultures. They have been much more bike and pedestrian friendly for decades. And what I don't know if we would be able to get what works from some of those places. Because the culture is so strong already. I mean, perhaps a historical view would help with that. Because I spend a lot of time in Boulder and it's just the way it is. Not that there aren't maniac bikers there, because there are, but I think we should do some research on it. And Counselor Garcia, I would like to, this is sort of a little bit off topic, but if you are asking for the funding, is it an appropriate time to ask for funding to support the maintenance resolution as well? Because if this is your one time to ask, that would be really great. Thank you.
Answer to that is yes, absolutely. Never stop asking for resources. Any other comments? Member Pilcher.
Well, it sounds like the Planning and Policy Committee should do some more research on this. Right now, it's me and Bill. So we'll get to it and get back in touch with you as soon as we're able to do it. Might take a month or two, given the holiday season here, but see, we can find out in terms of, also get an idea of what actually works and get some idea of what the costs may be. Hopefully meet with Parks, and I think since like I said, I just recently saw these no ATV signs go up. We ought to have a pretty good idea what it costs to put up a sign, since we just put some up.
Right, so do we want to assign this for? Is that?
We'll try. Yeah, like I said, with the holidays may be tough, but we'll try.
So I think we can make a motion just to refer it to the committee, and then when the committee's ready, they can come back and present. Okay, so we have a motion on that action.
I move to assign the research of this question to this Policy and Law Committee.
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, Lucretia, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Chair. Member Erica Bowe,
Yes.
Member and Judith Gabriel,
Yes.
Member Tony Gerlix,
Yes.
Member Steve Pilcher,
Yes.
Member Gary Schiff Miller,
Yes.
Chair Michael Garcia.
Yes,
Motion passes.
great, thank you. You, Member Pilcher, for bringing this topic forward and to investigate it. Let's go to move on to the next item, which is 7C, Bike Santa Fe Bike Audit Presentation. Jennifer Weber, floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Garcia and committee members. Jennifer Weber with Bike Santa Fe. So thank you for the opportunity tonight to talk with you about the bike audits that Bike Santa Fe did with funding from AARP. We received this community challenge grant from AARP in June, and we are part of the first cohort to be funded to do bike audits. So we're proud to be a part of that. And we did these audits using a bike audit toolkit developed together with the League of American Cyclists here. And it's a great toolkit, and it has worksheets also that we use. So this grant opportunity dovetailed nicely with a commitment that we had made to the city to identify some key routes and intersections through the city that could be prioritized for people to be able to cycle from one end to the city to the other safely. So we developed our locations using a number of tools. We surveyed our members and our email subscribers. We crowdsourced information at an event we had earlier this year. We literally had a map and had people put pins in it to identify locations. And I also reviewed data that the city Santa Fe Trails had put together. Andrew Baca had some great information on where people who don't have cars are concentrated, where schools are, where daycare centers are, where seniors are, where lower income people live. So we use that data to also prioritize our locations. And then we also had input from other organizations. We held a meeting, we had chain breakers, we had SOBs there, safe routes to schools. We got input from the Santa Fe Conservation Trust. And we also had a coalition meeting that HomeWise pulled together where we talked about routes. So we used all this information to identify our key locations for our bike audits. And these were our locations. We had 6 locations. We conducted 8 audits. 2 of the locations were at intersections, and we observed them both during a rush hour time and on a weekend time, so we could see the traffic at those different times. And here's the map. As you can see, those 6 locations were spread throughout the city, Midtown, and the South Side. So for each of these locations, what I'm going to do is go through sort of some key observations that our volunteers made, many of whom are in the room this evening, and then go through some key suggestions, and then show a few more photos. So this is not completely exhaustive, but the highlights. And I think, there were a lot of things we observed that will not be a surprise at many locations. Speeding cars speeding up to get through a yellow light, cars running red lights. So just consider those universal observations. So the first location we did was Cerrillos at Lujan, and Gary and I observed this location both times. And you can see the times we observed it there. This location is close to a school, and it's also right across the street from the Smith's shopping center there, close to the Midtown campus. So it's going to become increasingly a more important intersection. So we tested the lights. They do appear to sense the bikes when they're crossing. There is now an LPI when crossing Cerrillos when cars are present, which is great. Pavement markings are pretty faded. I know that from this section down to Siler, I think is being looked at as well. So I anticipate that those markings will improve. There's not a lot of signage here, including at a bus stop. There's a bus stop there that has a shelter, but there's no signage. And when we first observed this, I assumed that perhaps that bus stop had been taken out of commission during the pandemic, like many stops were. This is a location probably where a lot of unhoused people are, maybe people who don't have smartphones, who can't look at Google Maps and know when the next bus is coming. So, but we did notice somebody waiting for the bus, and a bus did come. So it's not out of commission, even though there's no signage at all. But another thing, and you've heard this from us before, that we also noticed about the lights when they were timed for cars to go down Cerrillos, which is great if you're a car, they shortened the time of the light going across Cerrillos. So now it is not long enough for somebody biking to get across the road. So our suggestions are to give bikes and pedestrians more time to cross Cerrillos. We noticed that there were a couple pedestrians who had mobility issues who were not able to get across Cerrillos during the time, I think it's 35 seconds of the light to get across Cerrillos, and there's no real pedestrian refuge in the middle. So that is an issue. We also think it's important to improve the signage and the wayfinding. How do people get from this intersection to the rail trail, to the Acequia Trail? Other signage would be important. Refreshing the pavement markings, including the bike lane markings. Also, we noticed that there's no trash receptacles. In this photo is the the bus stop, you can see with no signage. There's no trash receptacles at these bus stops. If people are coming from the shopping center, perhaps they've had a bite to eat, there's nowhere for them to dump their trash before getting on the bus or continuing their walk. And also, it might be nice to place some streetscaping, some planters to make it more attractive, especially as this becomes a place where there's more pedestrians with the Midtown campus development. That might be nice as well. So here's just some more photos. When we were there in the morning, and the glare was pretty strong. The bus stop again, just how wide that street is there in the top right photo. There's so many lanes and it's really hard for pedestrians to get across. Our next location, we actually picked this location, Camino Carlos Rey, both at Zia and Rodeo because they're so close together there. This location was selected because near this intersection has the highest density of seniors in the city. So given that this was an AARP grant, we selected this location. We did notice that the light on Camino Carlos Rey does seem to sense bikes. There's no bike lanes at the intersections, some potholes, debris, some drains really obstructing in the shoulder there. No signage alerting drivers to pedestrians, and some road paint is faded. When I was there in the morning on rush hour, I noticed there was a person out, walking their dog along there. So there are pedestrians. So more information for drivers is needed. And then I did, of course, notice cars running red lights. So we do suggest, a bike lane along Camino Carlos Rey and Zia and at the intersection, repainting the road markings, fewer lanes on Zia to calm traffic or narrowing them and creating a buffered bike lane, making sure that the bikes trigger the lights at all the intersections, and then improving the landscaping along sidewalks and such for pedestrians. One thing you can see, this is not a big shoulder on Camino Carlos Rey there, and certainly a shoulder that a bike cannot bike in given the cement and the asphalt and the seams there. So just a few shots of that. This was not the worst intersection, I would say. Our next one, Richards Avenue from Governor Miles Road to Velocity Way. This was brought to our attention by Chainbreaker because it is on the way to the community college. So important for people to be able to bike here. We do realize that part of this is also in the county. So some things that the city can't do. It was observed on a Sunday, and I think our volunteers said they saw at least 11 people biking on this route on that Sunday for recreation. There was several pedestrians probably on their way to Pantry Do's who got lost, I think, because they weren't quite sure where they were going. So there's a lot of inconsistent signage near the traffic circle at Rabbit Road, speed limits, the bikes enter the traffic circles. There is that green paint in one section that just makes it stand out so nicely. As you can see from this, there's a lot of weeds and rubble obstructing the bike lanes or the shoulders. Bike lane markings are faded, not enough wayfinding signage for the car-free trails, and a lack of connection between some of those paths and Richards. So here's the lack of connection between the path and Richards. It just stops. So our suggestions, more speed limit signs, especially approaching traffic circles, more signage about cyclists, the be muffle signs, again, at the traffic circles, maintenance of the shoulders, repaving and repainting the bike lanes along the entire route, and just better signage and path connections. There's that green section of the bike lane. And again, you can see a couple of those photos there, how the shoulder/bike lane is just completely obstructed. So cyclists certainly cannot be expected to avail themselves of those lanes or shoulders. Our next location, and Tony and Gary, I think, were both on this observation. This was Siler Road to the Maize connection. And this is important because, as you see, this is the new connector there. And this location was important because this area and some of those apartments on the south side of Rafina have some of the largest concentrations of people who do not own cars. And so before this connector was there, people have to go to either Cerrillos or Agua Fria to ride their bikes. And there was no way, of course, from kids to get to the park from this side without going there as well. And this is also very close to a school. So coming from Siler to the park and the connector, there's no marked bike lane on Rafina or Siler there. There's also an issue, and you'll see this in a photo, with the ramp at Rafina and Siler, where there's only a curb cut on the Rafina side, not onto the Siler side, creating an issue for pedestrians. The traffic lights only sense the bikes if they're in the traffic lane. So, on Rafina, there is a bike lane north or south of Siler. So if you're coming from this connector and you're on Rafina, I ride this a lot, and I usually am on sort of the right side in the shoulder because I'm crossing Siler and getting into the bike lane. But the light doesn't sense me when I'm there. It only senses if you're in the traffic lane. So we're hoping something can be done about that. And there's no wayfinding signage for bikes or pedestrians along the route to be able to find this connector. I think they're planning to put some in coming to it from the other direction, from the Acequia Trail, but we need them all along. And then a lot of sidewalks were blocked by vegetation and dumpsters. I think Bill was on this observation as well, and some of his photos will be seen in just a minute. So there's a photo of a sidewalk blocked by vegetation. So we do need better wayfinding, the curb ramps, making them ADA compliant, some pavement repair on Rafina, sidewalk maintenance, and then, crossing paint and signs at crossings along the route. Here's some, that upper left photo is the intersection at Rafina and Siler. You can see there's one curb cut from Rafina, but going onto Siler, there is no curb cut. And some other shots there of Rafina, dumpsters blocking the pedestrian, the sidewalks. And then the photo on the right is crossing from that pedestrian path that the person giving the public comment had the car going through. So this is where I think she's suggesting bollards would make sense. Is that right, Gary? Here, it doesn't look wide enough for that truck that barreled through, but evidently it is. And as you can see, it would be actually nice to have a crosswalk going into the park. Also, when you go into the park, when you're biking this, you have to make a left and go up to get into a path to get into the park, to get over to where the connector is. So perhaps for the Parks Department to eventually add just sort of a direct cycling route into the park from here, so you can just get into the park and get onto the sidewalks over to the our next location was Sawmill in St. Francis. And, we picked this location. It was brought to our attention, again, by Chainbreaker, that there are the Vizcaya apartments, I believe, where a lot of people who bike live. And to get to the Albertsons, you either have to go, cross St. Francis, get all the way to the rail trail, go around and come over St. Francis again. go along St. Francis, which is the instructions that Google Maps gives you, or there's sort of a makeshift path that they've put behind the apartments to go into the parking lot, which probably is not safe at night. It has a curb, so it's not good for cyclists to go through. So we did notice this, that there were some well-marked crosswalks, audible and visual pedestrian crossing lights across St. Francis there. There's no bike lanes or markings or signs on Sawmill, St. Francis, or Zia. The shoulder on Sawmill becomes a traffic lane at the St. Francis intersection. No sidewalks or trails on the east side of St. Francis, and there's no shoulder at various points there. And the bikes have to use the pedestrian crossing lights to cross Zia and access the St. Francis Trail. So, if there is a possibility to create a multi-use trail behind the apartments for people to get through, and adding some lights to make it safer as well, to create a separated path on St. Francis, bike signage, landscaping for pedestrians, and traffic calming. I realize this is a highway, but you can see in this photo, I think that's Aria cycling in there, that this is a shoulder on St. Francis that just disappears as you approach the entrance to the shopping center. We've all seen that. These are some other photos. As you can see there on the upper left, the makeshift trail behind the apartments to get into the shopping center, the back of the shopping center. Other shoulders disappearing along Sawmill, I believe, approaching St. Francis. The shoulder just disappears. And then as you can see, also the sidewalk disappears, kind of coming from Sawmill, turning north onto St. Francis. There's just, any sort of pedestrian access just disappears. Our final location, Steve and I walked Airport Road from South Meadows to Cerrillos. This is an important location because of schools and childcare facilities. And also it's an important road. And I realize that this, the funding and the bond measure that passed will hopefully improve Airport Road. So some of these hopefully will be taken into consideration. We did notice that sidewalks go along both sides of the road, which is really nice. In the bike lanes, again, that asphalt and the cement seams are bad, which is a hazard for bikes. It really makes those bike lanes unusable. Again, the lack of markings at bike lanes and crosswalks, lack of signage. The walk signal, and I was just talking with Ryan about this, the walk signal at South Meadows is not long enough for pedestrians to cross. I think it's like 7 seconds to cross South Meadows. And given that there's schools on either side of it, that really doesn't make any sense. And the signal at Airport in Jemez is just 7 seconds. So, what do we need when the road is refurbished? Pave up to the curb so there's not a seam that's hazardous to cyclists. The lanes right now are 11 feet. We think they can be taken down. We'd love 10, but I think the city is taking some down to 10 and a half feet. So you can take that and add it to a bike lane and hopefully make it a buffered bike lane with a rumble strip along Airport Road for safety. Make that road more attractive for pedestrians, given that there are sidewalks, there's shopping, there's apartments. We did observe people biking and walking along the road. Signage at bus stops. Again, there was a lot of bus stops that were just looked so forlorn. It's like a forlorn bench. Really pay attention to those. And then, there were some issues with how some of the crossings, where the signals were and how they aligned with shoulders or bike lanes on the contributing streets, like at Kaye, at Tahoe, where the signal is for you to cross. you cross onto Kaya Tahoe, but the shoulder where then you bike is on the other side of the road. So it kind of doesn't make a lot of sense where that is. And hopefully that can be remedied as well when the road is redone. Here's some photos. There's one of those forlorn bus benches, kind of some faded striping, weeds and debris. Again, on the upper right, an example of where the cement for the sort of gutter and the asphalt meet and create that seam. A bike lane with the weeds. And then on the lower, the second from the right photo is some of the sidewalks are buckled like this, which would make them really hard for, pedestrians, people with mobility issues to pass. So hopefully those can be fixed. So, I would say I did several of these locations, and walking and biking along them allow you really to observe them and experience them as a pedestrian, which, was not a pleasant experience by any means. And really that we need to think about the safety of pedestrians and cyclists becoming a priority. So what do we recommend in the shorter term? Really clean and maintain the sidewalks and the bike lanes, restripe crossings and lanes, and reconfigure the light timing. Bike Santa Fe got an email through our website just late last week from a member saying, hey, can you guys advocate for less debris in the bike lanes? It seems like when they sweep the roads, they just sweep everything into the bike lanes to make them really impassable. And I said, believe me, we're becoming a broken record on this issue, but we're trying. In the longer term, again, putting key bike routes through town, connecting trails and routes and key destinations like libraries, community centers, and retail, and then working toward complete streets, including traffic calming and bikers and pedestrians separated. Thank you. I will stand for questions.
Thank you for this thorough presentation and time it took to conduct the audit. Comments from members? Member Gabriel.
Thank you, Jen. This is really great information. I'm just thinking we went over the BPAC survey at the last meeting about connectivity and maintenance, and
Yeah.
we have made a plan to get more data, comments from the meetings, constituent services requests, and incorporating more comprehensive data to the presentations we're going to make. I don't know if you have plans to make these presentations to other committees, but I think it could be very powerful. I see especially the debris and the vegetation issues. They're huge problems. They were identified in your audit. They were identified in our survey. And it seems like we've got to buddy up here to advocate for some of this stuff getting done by the city. And I maybe there's a way for us to meet with those committees together, share all of this information, because it's really helpful and good information. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Chair Garcia, Member Gabriel, if we're able to make those meetings and partner on them, absolutely, we'd love to, or, provide information that you can use if someone from Bike Santa Fe isn't able to make it. Aria and I are meeting with the mayor, the interim city manager, and the DPW director on Monday to share out this information as well. And again, to, ask for funding for the resolution in next year's budget to tackle some of these shorter term issues at a minimum.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Jen. My comments is, first of all, I just wanted to recognize Jennifer, who is chair of Bike Santa Fe. And Bike Santa Fe, this should be done by staff, paid staff, who does all of this work go out and do the audits and put the the presentation together for use, but we have no staff, volunteers, and Jennifer has put in an enormous amount of work and an enormous amount of hours, and I just wanted to publicly recognize that. Thank you so much for doing that, Jen. Second comment I wanted to make is those sites that were chosen for the audit came from suggestions. We could have had a dozen more suggestions and a dozen more sites. We would have had the same sort of results. Sites. Everywhere in Santa Fe has the same issues, breed, vegetation, and lack of proper signage, striping, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just a slice of what we think really occurs throughout the city. Third, we just got the rankings from the American Bicycle, ranking the states in the United States. It's not Santa Fe, but New Mexico comes in at number 35, 50, which is certainly not where we want to be, but it's this sort of thing that contributes lower ranking. Higher, even though we've been designated as a silver city, it's our 8 years in a row where we haven't advanced to gold, and certainly the bicycle resolution and maintenance will be a help, and we can see this. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you for bringing up that ranking today. We're squeezed between Alaska and Idaho. Alaska's number 34, Idaho's number 36 in the rankings. So that's where we are. And we did get dinged. Somebody asked earlier during Aria's presentation about a safe passage law. And in the league's report on New Mexico's ranking, it dinged us for not having one. So I think we were able to achieve that statewide inch up a bit. Thank you.
Member Pilcher.
Just one more comment. I think I might have brought this up at a previous meeting, but again, I would hope BPAC and maybe through the technical review committee can have a role in reviewing plans when the street projects begin, even though they're just resurfacing. Paint's got to be new. Maybe we get some input on how wide those lanes should be striped and whether it could be something as simple as a rumble strip put in, things of that nature to make, some small improvements, which will, I think, have a pretty good impact, though.
One more thing I wanted to mention. I wanted to mention that MPO was also so helpful in our audits, providing traffic data information, existing, and they placed some counters at a couple different locations. So we have some traffic counts in our more detailed notes from the bike audit. So thank you to MPO.
Any other comments, questions? Well, thank you, Jennifer, for the presentation. Just one piece of feedback, no questions for me. Please make sure to send this presentation to the entire governing body. And I would recommend to reach out to Councilor Chavez, who is the chair of the Public Works and Utilities Committee, to see if this presentation can be given to that committee as well. It's better to have a lot of us on board and to advocate to get these changes made, but then made quickly. Absolutely. All right. Any other questions, comments? Thank you again. We're going to move on to the next item, which is 7D, Governor Miles Reconstruction Progress Plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This meeting was on the 15th of November and is the 30% meeting for the Governor Miles project. I guess it's reconstruction. Not sure how you phrase it. It was decided that the modified collector option was going to be used, and that includes two, I believe they were 11-foot lanes for traffic and a buffer and then a bike lane, 5-foot bike lane, and then another buffer and a sidewalk. So it's really good. It makes it much better for pedestrians to have that buffer between the pavement and the sidewalk. And I didn't say it at the time, and I've been reading about things, and it might be really nice to have trees along that buffer, but I believe it goes against federal highway guidance. And to not have the buffer, because the guidance says you can't have fixed objects in what they call the clear zone, because they're concerned that if a car was to go off the pavement, it would hit a tree or whatever fixed item. It sounds like the guidance is more concerned about protecting a driver who drives off the pavement than a pedestrian who is walking adjacent to that. And I know that's what the guidance is, but I wonder if there's some way we could somehow ignore that guidance. It's just guidance. It's not law. It seems to make sense to have trees between the sidewalk and the street for the safety of pedestrians and also for the aesthetic, sensibilities. Anyway, that's my personal take on it. I didn't mean to go on that tangent. So it's the modified collector, and it will have buffered bike lanes, and they are considering seriously rumble strips on the buffers, which I was very glad to hear. And I know there are some concerns about the rumble strips. Jennifer Morrow was concerned about the noise issues. Does everybody know Jennifer? She's our new Complete Streets Vision Director. Just like to acknowledge her presence here. And yeah, that may be concern. And this is somewhat experimental. We haven't done rumble strips on bike lanes in Santa Fe, and this and the Bishop's Lodge project are considering them, and I think it's worth a try. I've become aware recently of some academic studies that show that painted bike lanes do not protect bicycles at all. 0% increase in safety. So maybe rumble strips could improve on that. I don't know. Worth a try. I don't have a whole lot more to say. The main thing about, I wanted to point out that it's good to have sidewalks with the buffers, and I'm really glad they're going to consider the rumble strips.
Any comments or questions for Member Schiffman?
Quick question, is this next year construction project? 26.
I'm not exactly sure when they're going to begin construction. It's at 30% now, so I don't know that it's going to be next year. Does anybody know? I'm not sure exactly.
Any other comments, questions for Member Schiffman? Thank you for the update. Next up is item 7E, promoting LCIs. Member Gerlitz. Yours, the floor is yours.
Yeah, no, I've already spoken on it, just to encourage BPAC members. Contact myself if you're interested in being an LCI, and then to get you a letter to switch.
F, which is appointment of technical review subcommittee chair. I believe that is appointing Member Schiffmiller, or
Chair, it is actually Eric Abo.
so I will appoint Member Abo to become the technical review subcommittee chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Well, good luck in leading that committee.
Great. It's a good group. Thank you.
Good. I hope you feel better soon.
Thanks.
We'll go to move on to item 8A, policy planning and law subcommittee update. Member Pilcher, floor is yours.
I'm going to ask Bill to make a presentation here, since we both had a meeting yesterday with Leroy Pacheco and Ian Morgenbarger or Wolfenbarger.
Absolutely.
You're tired of listening to me, so I'll give you something else to listen to.
We're always happy to have. Floor is yours, Bill.
Thank you. Yeah, the subcommittee for policy met with Gene and Leroy. Leroy, I believe, is under contract with the city to oversee all traffic calming requests, I believe, for the next 3 years. So we did it more of an informational meeting. We discussed the traffic calming policy, which has been dormant for review for the past couple of years because of the introduction of complete streets. And we learned some history that when that policy was written, there was capital funds used to introduce traffic calming devices such as speed bumps, signage, rumble strips, and circles, medians. Since then, there has been no funds, operating funds allocated on a regular basis for either new traffic calming needs or maintenance of existing traffic calming. So that is a shortfall that we became aware of. Also, we asked or were discussing about, do we have an inventory of traffic calming devices such as speed humps or and the answer is no. The city doesn't have an inventory. But prior to the meeting, Eric offered that possibly through MPO, we can get some type of preliminary count. Some of those, like speed humps, some of those traffic calming devices. We also talked a little bit about constituents' requests or reports of traffic calming, whether it's on streets or trails. I want to say probably about 4 or 5 years ago with the introduction of the constituent services system, the request comes through, it gets assigned a number, and then it goes to Public Works, who then sends back an answer to constituent services, which records then whether or not the constituent's request was addressed or what happened to it. Public Works doesn't keep a record of how many requests come in or what type of requests come in for traffic calming, nor what's the status of their completion. So I think Steve and I will probably follow up with constituent services and see if we can start getting some data reports. For example, how many people are requesting, they're again requesting a speed hump on their street. And then what's the status of that request? That might be of value to the city to identify where are the concerns of the citizens related to traffic calming. And I could see this also being applicable then to requests that come in regarding trails in the city also. So that kind of is my summary, I think, of what we discussed with them.
Thank you, Bill, for that update. Any questions from committee members, comments? Member Pilcher.
When I add to that, my understanding too, is there is no set pot of money on an annual basis for traffic calming projects. So it's not like there's $250,000 to go put in speed tables around town or whatever the case may be. Also, I also understood them, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, that process is such, you go to them with a request to do it and meet some minimum threshold, then it gets turned back to the neighborhood with a lot of footwork to do in terms of getting people to sign up and agree to this. And a lot of those requests die at that point because I don't know, either people don't get the work done or they can't get enough people who will agree to the installation. Because a lot of people, it sounds good in theory, particularly if the speed table is not in front of your home. It sounds great, but if it's, near your home, you may not want to hear the clunk of cars going up and down over that all day and all night long. So it's a challenging program, I know, but hopefully they can find a way to get an inventory. I was a little surprised that we haven't yet been able to geolocate those and get that imported into GIS. It's good to know what you've got.
Questions? Thank you for the presentation. Really appreciate it. Promotion, Education, and Communications, Member Gabriel.
I don't have a lot to report, but as I mentioned before, the committee will be getting together after the holiday to compile more information about connectivity and maintenance requests and desires on the part of the public to address those issues. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Comments? Okay. Next up is Technical Review Subcommittee with the newly appointed chair, Member Abo. Sorry to put you on the spot, Member Abo.
Not a problem. Thank you very much. There is really nothing to report. We have not had any reviews recently, so sorry, nothing to report.
Any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. Next up is matters from staff. Risha, any matters from staff?
No, Chair.
Matters from the committee. Member Pilcher.
Question, where are we at with, on the status of filling our 2 vacant positions?
So I know that we haven't opened up recruitment for either of those yet. So we'll have to check in with Romella. So my hope is that we'll do a public call for both the District 4 and what will be the district position.
My only other comment is, please take some cookies on your way home before you go home tonight. I don't want to take all this home myself. Thanks.
Any other comments from committee members? Seeing none, matters from the chair. I have none. Just thank you all for another great year of work. It's sometimes seems like if we do a lot of work and then it slows down, but that's unfortunately the wills of government at play. And sometimes it's a hurry up and wait process, but I thank you all for just continuing to stay engaged, and let's continue the success into 2025. With that, our next meeting is in January 9th, 2025. So with that, we're adjourned.
Thank you.